G'day everyone and welcome to this week's Life on the Hulls, and I'm just back from a 2-week whirlwind trip to France and England, and then saved the highlight. I went to my 40th school reunion, and I'm just back today. We're back on the boat. Nice to be back on the boat, and Darren's back from Queensland, and the sunset's just beautiful here. We're heading into summer here in Jervis Bay or in Australia, and it's just magic to be in shorts and t-shirt at 7 o'clock at night, so we're loving it. This week I'm going to hit the foam core tender again. We're going to go back a little bit to remind you where I started the thing, and then we're going to work our way through. Over the next few months, you're going to see that develop into potentially our car. Now, Janet and I have actually moved on board as of now, and that's pretty exciting for us. We're so stoked to finally have moved on board, and we're now a little bit more independent and free to be able to just take off as we like. I've still got a little bit of work to do. I've got to make a fleet of kayaks for the local tour operator, so that's pretty exciting as well, before we finally take off around about January, which is around about 4 or 5 months away. So let's get into it, and don't forget to like and subscribe. We're having a great time here, and it's really nice to be back on the boat. Head sail, and I have to fit the furling line into it, which is going to basically wrap around this potentially in a clockwise direction, because I want it to unfurl anti-clockwise. So I need to wrap at least a full barrel of furling line, which is a 10mm line, around this, and I have to get it installed. And the way you do that is actually feed the rope through here, tie a knot on the other side, and then basically just wind it. So pretty simple, to be honest. And that is then going to go from here across to this stand-up block along the side of the boat there, and through a deck organizer and into a clutch, and then into the actual winch itself. So it's not that complicated, but getting it on here is a little bit complicated. There's virtually nothing on the market showing you how to do this. There's no videos out there, so I'm not even going to make a video, because I'm not going to share that information, because I have to work it out myself. Simply undo the 4 screws, pull out the furler here. You'd probably be best if you can remove the cage, but you'll see right up in here, there's actually a hole, and that is where the furling line will go, and essentially it will then wrap completely around the furler until we run out of rope. So I'm going to basically get that loaded up now. It's a pretty simple, straightforward process. And when we were at Sydney Ropes the other day, we're trying to determine that we want to have nice bright ropes for our running lines, and that's what we've done. Our main sheet is lime green with a black fleck in it, and Janet, in her wisdom, has chosen this for the head sail, for the furler and for the sheet. So the sheet line is this guy here, nice and bright. It goes back to the helm up there over the top of the helm, so it's very distinctly different to where this line's going to go. This particular one is going to come from the furler across to this stand-up block, along and up to the bottom winch, so they're basically delineated, and we're not going to get them confused. And obviously we don't want to let out a sheet when we should be letting out the furling line. Now, the important thing about furlers is it needs to come out at 90 degrees to the furler. It's very important you don't have it coming out at 45 degrees, because then you're going to end up with a lot more problems. So we'll come out from the back. Alright, so our furling line will come running up here and back to this winch through a turning block, and then another turning block, and then a winch, so that we can easily furl it in. I've just loaded the drum up. It's simply a matter of putting the knot in, screwing it back together, and just winding it. So we've now got the ability to be able to unfurl. Can't quite do it at the moment because I've got the halyard tied off to it. However, should be able to just get it a little bit tidy. Hoping I've got enough line on it. I'm sure I have. So that guy's coming down to here, and then this will be fed out all the way back to the helm. So this is going to have to be redirected with some fair leads. From here, I'm going to basically direct it into a fair lead here and run it up this smooth section of the deck here to keep it away from the hatches so that it won't ever rip a hatch off. Not that we should have the hatch out when we sail, but it'll be more likely to be from here, another fair lead just around about where the where that hatch is, and potentially another one further up. We're trying to reduce friction because it does need to be simple. I was going to run it down the outside line, but then it's got to cross across that companionway there, and I don't like that, so we'll try to keep it nice and neat all the way along here. It's going to have to come through a clutch right here, through a turning block here. When I've marked it there is where I intend to put those fair leads. I've got to drill a hole and core it and fill it with epoxy before I then come back and obviously ultimately fit the part. So this whole boat, every single hole I've drilled has been cored. So important to do that. I've been saying it right from day one, and I'm just not going to let up on that edict, because if I do, what will happen is ultimately we're going to get delamination of the foam. This is only 10mm foam right here, but it's got about masses of layers of glass here, and there's a lot of structure in this area here. So to carry a clutch, and I bought this simple spin lock 12mm clutch here. It's going to sit here and basically feed onto this winch. It's not the ideal angle, but I don't think it's going to be a problem. I ultimately think it will certainly lead on there, and because it's only a furler, I'm not really that concerned about it. All we have to do is basically winch in the head sail, and we'll try that. If not, I could always position it back here where it has a better angle of approach, have it go to a turning block here, down to a turning block here and along. But I think this angle is better. 45 degrees will give me you know, a nice controlled approach to the actual clutch, and then obviously we're reducing the load on all the blocks and turning sheaves and the like. But for now, I'm going to drill the holes where they need to go. I'm not going to drill all the way through, because remember, I've got a sandwich here. All I need to do is really drill out the foam, and then I'm going to leave the backing there, fill it with epoxy, and then I'll come back and re-drill the whole thing through, and then we'll obviously fill it with Sikaflex or something. And I'll get that done, and then tomorrow I can come back. Actually, I won't be here tomorrow. The day after tomorrow I'll come back and I'll be able to fit all of this, and that is the end of the running rigging. I've basically got it all installed, ready for the sails to go on next week. I've spent the better part of the last 4 or 5 nights splicing eye splicers and Dyneema soft shackles. And there's going to come a point where I've actually got to do them on the boat. I can't just do them in my lounge room, which has been a nice controlled environment. And one of those is this one. The jib sheet has got to have an eye splice. It actually starts at a becket here, goes out to the furler, back to a block, up the mast, down and back to the helm. But to facilitate this, I need an eye splice here for this becket. So I've begun it here. I've actually got the system and ultimately it'll look like this, and then I'm going to get Janet to stitch it, or I'll stitch it and then Janet will wick it to finish it. Obviously we want to have them looking nice. We also don't want any fraying. But yes, I've got the required equipment here. I've got the video to remind me how to do it. The problem with this is you never remember how to do it, and you got to. There's so many different splices available. This particular one is obviously a double braided polyester, so we're working on it here, ready to decore it and start to feed it back in on itself. Start by taping this, decide on the size of our eye and then mark it, and obviously that's about the size I'm after, which is nice for a becket. And then we've got 1 fid length, and that's where we're going to pull the core out, and then 3/4 of a fid length here is where the splice is going to end. So you know, there's a million videos on this. I'm not going to show you how to do it, because look it up somewhere else. To be honest, there's millions of them out there, and quite frankly I'm not going to be as good as them, but I can do it, and certainly it is not that hard. So it's just basically a matter of following the procedure. So about 4 days ago I cored the holes for the epoxy. This one going into the front robe. These are nice fair leads, these ones. Nicer that one I just put in. 12mm guys. I'll clean that up in a minute. We're a fully Ronstand fitted boat. There's only got a couple of spin lock clutches on here and on the jib halyard, and then the rest of it, other than our Lumar winches and there's some clutches there, all of our pulleys and blocks are. Well, I've been waiting a while to do these fair leads and the jib furler, because I've been waiting for Janet to come down to the boat, and she's been busy, haven't you?
I always always cop it. I never actually do anything, but I always get blamed.
So you never do anything, that's the problem. No, I ain't joking, darling. Been busy with marine rescue. Janet's got a few things going on. They had assessments for the coxswains for the marine rescue, and then Janet was out assisting with that, and then she's doing a trainer and assessor course for marine rescue. It's all happening. We're working on the house, and just getting Janet down to the boat and committing her to doing a job is a bit challenging at the moment. We've got a lot going on. So fortunately these bolts have come through here, so they're not going to interfere too much with the roof lining that we're putting in, or we've put in. This one in here is good because it's just coming straight through the roof. Sorry, Dan?
We're doing the wardrobe first.
Yeah, do the wardrobe first, right? So we'll get the nuts and washers on that, and that'll be job done. Laying low and to clean it off, but now we've got our fair leads. Beautiful. Look at this. And running neatly up the side of the boat. Up through here. Up through the block, which is not in the perfect position. I sort of stuffed up there, but anyway, it's going to do. It's only a furler. We'll get him to go through there and through the clutch and onto the winch. We can just shut that off. Yeah, clutch is on. So that's worked out perfectly. And running along the line of the boat. Up through a block. Into a clutch. Probably didn't even need the block. But yeah, I did actually. You know what, it would have been nice if that block was down the bottom. Might put another fair lead in there. Had a bit of a halt on the foam core tender project because I ran out of foam. I've got the main hull section shaped and all glued together. I've had to put a bit of a join here in the raked bow here. Essentially they're 2.4 meters long. My tender is actually 3.1 meters long. So what I've actually done is I'm just going to cut it right here, and then I'll use the top part here. I'll actually add on with another small piece. It's pretty simple just to add the foam, get it together, and then I'll be able to laminate the whole thing. So I'll cut these out. It's very simple with 10mm foam. You just use a Stanley knife, you just trim it, and then you're ready to go. So it's a pretty quick process. Okay, so I haven't designed the back of it yet. I'm going to basically get it all in place, and then I'll work on the design once I flip it over. But what I'm actually doing is I've done the small section at the front here. As you can see, I've added a part onto the nose here just because I wanted extra length in the actual bow. But then I'm hand sanding these parts to fit around the form, and I've actually increased the flare here on the bow by about another 5 centimeters. So what I've done then is I've actually sanded this to match, and the great thing about it is I'm actually using that, well, more intentionally, I'm trying to get them symmetrical, so each piece will be exactly the same as I go forward. But yeah, foam core is pretty easy to work with, and once you get your shape, as long as you've got a form, you need to have a very solid form to tie it into. Once you've got that, you can actually glue it all together and then laminate it, and that's pretty straightforward. I do love working with it. It's very, very simple, and you get all the benefits of it being super lightweight. Okay, there's been quite a bit of sanding and finishing along here, and what I've done is I've actually pinned down the original hole that I made, pinned it onto the jig, which is required, and then I'm going to glue these next pieces on with epoxy. And obviously you can just simply butt join foam with no issues whatsoever. So it'll be butt joined on there, and you can see the ultimate shape of the thing. It's about 1.5 meters wide, so 1500 millimeters wide, and it's going to be about 400 millimeters high. That's the whole sides. I couldn't go any bigger because it wouldn't fit in the back of the catamaran. We actually tried Darren's, which is about 30 centimeters longer. Okay, next day, it's all glued up. I've just spent a bit of time sanding the join down here. It actually looks reasonable. It's not quite fair yet, but yeah, we've got a good shape here. I'm going to flip it over and just have a look at what it looks like upside down, so that I can start to determine the sides of it. I do have to be a little bit careful. I've got a bit of a slump here in the jig, so I'll need to prop this jig up just here. It's not quite right, but anyway, well, it's because it's still flexible. I've still got time to address it, and then I've got to start to work on how I'm going to design the back end of it. But yeah, so there's going to be a buoyant pod in the back here and steps, or a step so that I can step in and out of the tender quite easily. But anyway, we'll work on that. I'll get it flipped over. We'll have a look at what it looks like. So I need to get it on a rigid form and then reverse the jig so that we can then engage the sides. Now this is an indication of what the side will look like. I'm going to make that a lot higher, probably about 45 centimetres. This is only about 30 centimetres or a foot and a bit. But essentially not that difficult to do, which would be good. I'll be able to get rid of the jig once I get it laminated. By removing the jig, I'll have it essentially upside down, and then I'll be able to work on putting the sides on. Whether I put a release chine on here or whether I continue this below and put a hard rail on it, haven't quite decided that. I'm not really sure it's going to need a rail. I think rails can be a little bit dangerous. You always want to have release. We don't need anything too hard on it, but you know, that'll work quite well. Every few days I get a couple of days in the factory, and I'm loving that. I'm doing 2 days to 3 days on the boat and a day in the factory, and concentrating on very important tasks like the foam core tender, the steps to the side of the boat, and a few things around the house, which is nice after 7 years of neglect. And the house is getting to the point where we're almost up to date with all the maintenance. So that's been a massive, monumental effort, and we've had a few things going on. Poor old Lexi passing away a couple of days ago, so I lost a couple of days there. And I'm just a bit of a worker. I love to keep working. So very importantly, I've come in to deal with this guy here. Now what's happening here, I'm actually shaping it by eye. I've got the hull shape and the sides as I want them, but I've decided I want a bit of a rounded back on it. So I'm going for a bit of a curve here on both sides, and then I'm intending to curve the front as well. At the moment it's a real plumb bow, and I don't like that. I want it basically to have a bit of a rounded form on the front, so I'm intending to make this curve like this. So all that shaping gets done by hand. All this thing is just basically glued together, and then I'm going to be able to pop it back on that mold and or back on that pattern shape there, my jig, and ultimately get it laminated up. But I do want to resolve the shape of the back of it prior to that. So having these large sort of 45 centimetre high sides on it is going to be nice. It's just going to give it a lot of buoyancy and a lot of comfort on the water to keep us dry. But I do need to round it off because I intend to have a wraparound foam bolster or fender all the way around it, a bit like an OC Tenders fender, but I'll be probably having to say that myself. This here needs to be cut down and then curved around, so we'll get a bit of shape to it at this stage, and then we can work on the final form. Within 10 minutes of getting into it, I'm right into it. I've basically completely decided how I'm going to do the back of this boat, and I'm pretty happy with it as well. Okay, what I've opted to do, I've had a look at AST tenders from, I think they're from Germany. Now they have a nice little feature on the back of their boat, and it's essentially a small step. What I've done here though, I've increased the buoyancy up to 15 centimetres of buoyancy in the back here, so that's actually quite a buoyant pod on the back here, and it will have a step here. But I've actually decided, like they've done, I'll just put a picture of what I'm sort of alluding to here, is to put a curved back on it like this. And that's not going to be that easy. I'm going to have to curve some foam. So what I've actually done is I've penned this whole thing out with some jigs. Obviously they're holding the shape of the boat, and quite like this because it gives me a good solid form to do it. It's very similar to kayak building, in fact, how we used to sort of design and formulate a plug. But this is actually coming along, and this will look quite nice. Now these aren't going to be pointed corners, they're going to be rounded, so I'm going to have to infill that with foam to get the shape, and then obviously shape it back. So essentially it's a lot of shaping to be done here, and I'm quite liking the concept of what I'm coming up with here. I think this is going to make a massive difference to the usability of the boat as well. Just being able to pull yourself up and get a knee on the back of the boat before you get in is going to make a massive difference to the ability to be able to go snorkeling off it, to scuba dive off it and the like. So on the back of the boat here, it's got to have a curve. This angle here is further forward than it is on the inside of the transom there. So we're going to basically have to curve some foam to fit in similar to this. And that'll actually give me a really nice sort of shape. It won't just be a 45-degree angle. I could make it a 45-degree angle, but I don't want to. I want to make it nice if I can, and it's going to be a lot more work to do it this way, but the nice thing about that is it'll look a lot different, and it'll certainly be unique. Now I think I'm onto something. I've actually got some cardboard shaped, and I'm actually liking that. I think that's going to look lovely. The problem is you've got to make it look good. If it doesn't look good, it's going to annoy the hell out of me. I mean, it's very boxy at the moment, but you're sort of playing with shapes, and I'm back to where I did the helm station a few years ago. I played with shapes until I got, something that looked a little bit cosmetically appealing with nice rounded corners and a bolster around the back here. I think I'm going to end up with something that looks pretty good here. I've just got to make sure I can protect the boat and the catamaran. So important to be able to protect both and also have something reasonably light. So I don't want to add too much shape because that obviously is going to add weight, but also I can cut down, I'll probably cut down a bit of weight here. But this is looking quite nice as it stands. I think I quite like that transom, and there's plenty of room there for some beach wheels and plenty of room for a good sized motor, and obviously we're going to be looking at davit mounts and things like that as well. So plenty going on here. The tender project is taking shape, or I've just pulled it apart because I'm going to actually glue it together. This will be the end of what I can do without actually starting the laminating process, because I need to maintain the hull form. As I add all of these bits and pieces, I've got to be careful I don't distend the hull and change the shape of it from the original mould. And by putting on the back section here, I'll be able to then get it to the point where the rear section is rigid enough to be able to flip over and still maintain our jig that we've got sitting underneath. You can see me having it sat here on top of the jig. I haven't changed the jig at all, and that's exactly why I'm doing this now, is I need to solid up the back part of it so that the whole thing holds its form. Okay, so that's all glued up. I'm going to have to leave that for a day or so. What I'm going to do, I'm going to basically put this lid up in here to get a round form for the front or the bow of the boat. And I intend to make it shaped like that rather than a square end, and it's going to be a little bit more complicated to do. I'm going to have to curve some foam to get that in place, but I think that'll look super nice and be a bit of a softer entry into the water. This part here, this will actually be rounded here, so what I'll do is I'll get that cut first, and then I'll work on how I'm going to do the top sides, and I can get all that glued in place today, and then basically the whole form is done. There is always a bit of MacGyvering going on, so what I've actually done, I've just basically masking taped the whole thing together, and more importantly, I've put some screws in the bottom just to hold it in place. But yeah, that's looking good. I've sort of basically barreled it, or coopered it into existence here. But yeah, that round nose is going to make the whole thing look a damn sight more appealing, I think, and I'm hoping now that I've done that and it all glues up, I've now completed the hull. I've just had a good look at it here. I'm actually going to kerf these pieces of foam here that are going to sit in here. I'm going to do them independently. I'm not going to just put in one piece. I'll use a number of pieces, probably 3 or 4, to get this curvature around here, because I think that's the sort of the defining part of the stern of the boat and the sugar scoop. I've sort of might even change my approach here and make it a little bit more like the back of our other boat. But anyway, the nice little sugar scoop here is big enough just to get your foot on, and to step onto the boat, and also to get a knee on if you should happen to get up out of the water if you're actually snorkeling or diving. So yeah, anyway, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to go and get some firewood because it's just freaking freezing today.